You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
There's never been a better time for Trump to finally ride to his epic fall, based on an article by D. Earl Stevens. Georgia showed the system. It did not save us. Power was never ambiguous. The source story centers on Georgia's 2021 Senate runoffs, but the real subject is power: who had it, who tried to keep it, and who used the office of the presidency to smash any limit on it. Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Donald Trump refused to accept that outcome, lost his legal challenges, and then turned the state machinery of Georgia into a test site for election sabotage. That is the basic structure here. Trump was not confused, and this was not a mood disorder with a flag on it. He was the president, and he used presidential authority and presidential access to try to reverse an election he lost. Georgia was built for this fight. The source correctly points to a deeper structure in Georgia. The runoff system itself was built in 1962 by Republicans to stop black voters from consolidating power. That detail matters because it exposes the long game. The rules were designed to suppress Democratic influence, and in 2021 they briefly turned against the very people who had designed them. Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock were not random beneficiaries of civic luck. They were competing inside a system whose racist architecture was finally straining under the weight of black political mobilization, pandemic turnout, and organized democratic effort. The runoff was not a civic ritual. It was a contest over whether the state would count the people that white political power had tried to dilute for decades. Trump's real target was the process. The source makes the correct factual point that Trump's behavior damaged Georgia Republicans more than it helped them. He did not act like a party leader trying to preserve Senate seats. He acted like a would-be autocrat demanding obedience while threatening election officials, pressuring Brad Raffensperger to find 11,780 votes, and pushing fake electors for Mike Pence on January 6. That is not a side plot. That is the plot. Trump was not defending Republican candidates. He was using them as disposable scenery in a larger campaign against electoral legitimacy. The Georgia GOP became collateral damage in his effort to make elections subordinate to his personal will. Institutions chose drift. The source also names two institutions that failed in predictable ways: the corporate media and the Department of Justice. The media normalized the crisis by treating an assault on elections as one more noisy day in Washington. The DOJ, under Merrick Garland, moved far too slowly for the scale of the offense and left the public to absorb the lesson that elite criminality can become administratively survivable. That failure is not accidental. It is what institutional cowardice looks like when it is dressed up as prudence. If the state will not move decisively against an outgoing president who tried to corrupt elections, then the state is advertising the limits of its own authority. Those limits are political, not legal. The coalition that answered what stopped Trump in Georgia was not media performance, not elite hand-wringing, and not bipartisan moral theater. It was organized Democratic power, especially black voters, allied candidates, and a campaign that stayed disciplined while Trump flailed. Warnock and Ossoff did not win because the system was fair. They won because people organized inside a hostile system and refused to surrender the field. That is the part the source understands best. Democratic power is made, not bestowed. It came from turnout, discipline, and the plain refusal of Georgia voters to let a man in the White House treat their ballots like raw material for fraud. The pattern is bigger than Georgia. Georgia is not just a state in this story. It is the template. Authoritarians rely on racist rules, corrupt pressure, weak institutions, and an exhausted press corps to turn obvious abuse into background noise. They lose only when opponents treat democracy as a material struggle for power, not as a sermon. The lesson is not that one election saved the republic. It is that the republic keeps surviving by a narrower margin than its rulers admit, because one side keeps trying to govern through sabotage while too many institutions keep pretending sabotage is just politics. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Alternet for today's article. With the automated voice of Sam, thanks for listening.